and I'm going to have you introduce yourself. We have proposals from the Board of Health, both in terms of emergency services, but also in terms of making the municipal buildings a healthier place to work and to get service. So we're going to have two gentlemen who will introduce themselves, and then they'll make their presentation. Again, the same thing. We talk about if you can do something, if we can't give you the full amount, but you could get a certain amount, what would be the emphasis on what you're trying to do? So just got to keep that in mind.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you so much, Mayor, for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Jeff Trask, and I serve as the Emergency Management Director for the City of Holyoke. I'm also on the Fire Commission for the city as well. Just like to brief on the proposal that we submitted for enhancements to municipal resilience, I think is what we called it. So, yep. But in short, it really is an effort to look at some of the gaps that we currently have in our ability to respond to emergencies. And not to say that the police department, very capable of responding to emergencies, fire department, very capable of responding to emergencies. So this is in order to mitigate some of the impact from those emergencies. So let's say we have a building collapse. Police and fire will respond. They'll, address any immediate, public safety, health responses, and then we have a population that's displaced. So at that point, we need to shelter them. The proposal on the table is really to invest in a number of portable trailers that can be used to address specific gaps that may exist. So if we're sheltering in a building that doesn't have adequate toilets or showers or power, or they might need cots and blankets, right? Each one of these trailers would be outfitted to meet those specific needs, and they would be deployed as needed depending on where the most need was. So in addition to toilets, showers, shelter supplies, we're also suggesting an investment in pet supplies so that we can open up a pet shelter, because that's obviously a concern. One of the challenges working with Red Cross, as generous as they are, they don't allow pets in their shelters. So if we were to have Red Cross come out and help us staff a shelter, we'd have to kind of figure out what to do with some of the pets. So that's a new trend out there in emergency preparedness, and we'd like to invest in a trailer that would allow us to do that as well. Another gap that we've noticed is the backup power generation for certain municipal buildings. So what we'd like to do is invest in a couple large-sized trailer-mounted generators, and those generators could be used to power buildings in time of emergency if there's a power outage. We would invest in transfer switches for those buildings and then be able to roll the generator up, power the building, and it's a much more cost-effective way to provide emergency power in the off chance you may need it, given the quality of work the Holyoke Gas and Electric does, than actually investing in pouring pads, putting in permanent generators, large costs when it comes to that. So the entire proposal, and the other thing I think we'd include in the proposal would be a vehicle, some sort of SUV with a tow package, so that we could then tow these trailers to the locations. I think the total proposal was somewhere around $200,000. And to answer your question, it might have been. Am I wrong? 500? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. So to answer your question, I guess yes, the total proposal was $500,000, but because of the nature of the proposal, it's scalable, right? So if we really, say we only had 200,000, right, or 100,000, we would be able to use that money to buy, trailers in order of priority. So we would obviously start with cots and blankets, right, toilets, showers, the generators, then maybe the pets, right? So we kind of made it an all-inclusive proposal, but if we did only receive a portion of that
Yep.
funding, we'd be able to put it where it can go to the most use.
Okay, and just so quick, and we talked a little bit about it before, but so in effect, we would bring the trailer to the emergency,
Right.
rather than trying to find a place after the emergency where we're going.
Yeah. So like if we choose to use a school or the War Memorial, it's not so much of a concern of whether or not the building has the right facilities. Obviously, you want to make sure something is structurally sound, but we would be able to augment that building with whatever resources it was lacking by using these trailers. In the same way, when we purchased portable light tower generators with a grant that we received from the state. We figure that those light tower generators have the ability to serve, an unlimited number of purposes, both planned events and actual emergencies as well. And they can be towed right to the location. They provide light, they provide power, and that's really the goal, is to increase our agility, right?
Yep.
During an emergency. So we have this big toolbox full of tools, and we can pull the tool out that we need in order to respond to the emergency.
So let me just deal with the one trailer. So how many restrooms, showers could one trailer? I mean,
Usually it's a pair. Yeah, usually it's
Okay.
a pair of toilets, pair of showers.
Okay.
And then when you're looking at shelter trailers, you're not sheltering inside the trailer. It's a trailer full of supplies. So they go anywhere from 50 setups all the way to 500 setups,
Okay.
depending on what configuration you're looking for. And that includes a cot, blanket, pillow, and usually some meals ready to eat and some bottled water as part of that.
So if we were, I'll say the War Memorial for lack of another location right now. So if we would go to War Memorial, we would then bring in those cots so that people would stay in the War Memorial, but when they showered, they would get in a trailer for the showers and the restrooms
Right.
and things along that. And they would somewhat be connected to the building or right
Yeah.
adjacent to the building.
Yeah, so usually they would look for some sort of external water supply, right, and they would power supply, right, for the heaters and whatnot.
Okay.
So yeah, there may be a need to, depending on how the building is configured, you might have to put an external water source, you might have to put an external plug, but again, small expenses compared to the cost of, let's say, retrofitting a building. Because let's face it, I mean, unless you build a building specifically to be a shelter, most buildings out there just aren't gonna be, ready to walk into.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Jeff, one of the things that we were wondering about is who literally has control of these materials, the truck, the trailers, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend that. And again, it's where do you park them, right? That's going to be the biggest challenge. Is where do you put the trailers? How do you deploy them, right? Especially 24/7. So, obviously we'd look to partner with fire department. We'd look to partner with our 24/7 responder agencies. They're going to be first to know about the incident to begin with. And then I'm on call 24/7 as part of my responsibilities as emergency management director. So that's one of the reasons why we want to make sure we have the vehicle to tow them, so that if the fire department is responding, we'll have that ability to go hitch up the trailer, bring it to where we need it, and get set up in order to receive evacuees or respond to it another time. The other thing too is these trailers, the toilet trailers and shower trailers, could also be used if there's a long public safety response, even if there's no evacuees, just for rehabilitation for the firefighters and the police officers if they want to, use, if they're in a place where there's no facilities.
That's another valid,
Yep.
excellent point. Sean, you want to take charge? Make sure that microphone is brought to you, and a little closer than that, Sean. We had a little problem before where it wasn't coming. There you
Better?
go.
Are you giving Sean 10 minutes?
Was that?
10 minutes for Sean?
We're on the 15-minute total list, so go.
Hi, so I'm Sean Gonsalves. I'm the director of the Holyoke Board of Health, and the request or presentation that I'm covering today is public health improvements to essential municipal facilities. This is a joint application from the Board of Health and the Department of Public Works, as the scope of work falls under the Board of Health in the nature of the request, but the execution and much of the supervision would fall under the DPW. This is covered by ARPA expenditure category 1.7. It covers 10 buildings, 5 of which are typical municipal administrative buildings: City Hall Annex, Department of Public Works building, the library, and the exhibition hall, which houses the Volleyball Hall of Fame and the Children's Museum. And then the other 5 buildings are Holyoke Police Department, Holyoke Fire Department headquarters, stations 3, 5, and 6. There are 8 categories for improvements that we've listed in this request: carpets, skylights, roofs, windows, boilers, air filtration, a generator, and a fire alarm system. So the reason that this is being presented by the Board of Health, really because while these are structural improvements in totality, many of the reasons behind the urgency of this request is because of the CDC guidance that has become more and more clear and persistent throughout the last almost 18 months. as well as several indoor air quality assessments that were conducted by the Department of Public Health and their environmental analysts between October of 2014 and January of 2015. So some of the CDC guidance, relatively straightforward concepts they encapsulate a lot of the work that's done here. Increasing outdoor ventilations into buildings in order to increase effective dilution ventilation per person, meaning more fresh air per individual in the buildings. Improve central air filtration to MERV 13, which is a filter category that is minimum efficiency reporting value, or the highest available or compatible with the system you have. Keep systems running longer, if possible 24/7, and reduce or eliminate recirculation of air in the buildings. And so many of these requests that are in this $4 million package, including the windows and the air filtration in particular, are to help meet these CDC guidance categories for employees of the buildings, but also for the public that are accessing these buildings on a regular basis. The indoor air quality studies that were conducted in these buildings were specifically City Hall Annex, and the Fire Department headquarters, and they made several long-term recommendations that have not been addressed to date. Air tests were conducted for carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, temperature, relative humidity, and then they also ran separate air tests for airborne particulate matter, specifically PM 2.5, which is matter that has a diameter of less than 2.5 or 2.5 micrometers. They conducted a visual inspection of building materials for water damage and microbial growth, and they found considerable evidence of both in these buildings. So long-term recommendations that cover the Annex and City Hall pretty thoroughly. They suggested hiring an HVAC engineering firm to evaluate options for providing adequate ventilation. That includes either upgrading or replacing the HVAC systems that we have in City Hall and the Annex. Install exhaust ventilation in all of the restrooms. That's where you're seeing a lot of your moisture, odor, particulate matter buildup. There's no ventilation in any of the restrooms here, and that's an industry standard. They also recommend that we discontinue the use of the hallway air handling units that we have in the Annex because they have no fresh air intake and they regularly recirculate air that is already less than desirable. Installing gutters and downspouts to direct water 5 feet away from the foundation. You have water infiltration into the buildings, which contributes to mold, mildew, bacterial growth, and at the same time, as you walk into the buildings, the water is coming down directly on people making entrance into the Annex in particular. So, multiple reasons there. Address building envelope concerns. Damaged skylights. In particular, in the Annex, anytime it rains, water is collecting in the lobby, and it's collected in trash cans, which is a poor image to provide to the public of our institutions, but also it's a safety concern. Again, mold, mildew, air quality, slipping hazards. And then finally, one of the largest concerns we have for air quality and just as a physical issue is replacing carpeting as it is at the end of its usable life. The carpeting in the Annex and City Hall in some cases is decades old. It's older than I am. It's torn, it's frayed, it's filled with bacteria, and the recommended life of carpet in settings like this is 10 to 12 years, and we're 2 and 3 times past that in many of these settings. Carpeting is being replaced or recommended for replacement in 4 of these city buildings, particularly in the Annex and City Hall. It's getting to the point where it is beyond its usable life, and it can't even be cleaned properly because the condition is so poor. It's held together with duct tape. It's peeling away from the wall. It's no longer anchored. And so it constitutes a tripping hazard, as well as just being an overall indoor air quality nuisance.
Can I just ask you one question on carpeting? Because I know in discussions this came up. Would we be better off taking the carpeting out and not replacing carpeting?
Yes. Ultimately, the best case scenario would be return to the hardwood floors that pre-existed the carpeting in some of the areas, or to put down a non-permeable layer. It could be tile, it could be laminate flooring, it could be many things, but installed in such a way where it's not absorbent and it's less permeable to collecting dust and bacteria.
And is that part of this, or is it replacing carpeting? Do you know?
The minimum standards would be to replace the carpeting. So when we talk about, what could we get by on this proposal, if we were to cut back on this proposal to say $3 million or $2.5 million, it would be to replace carpeting with more carpeting. But in many of the situation, the carpeting has deteriorated, and so has the subfloor beneath it.
Yep.
And so it's not just pulling up the carpeting, putting new carpeting down. There's materials underneath that they need to be pulled up and replaced. And so the opportunity there would be better than it has been in a long time to put in a better system altogether for flooring.
Okay.
Skylights, just 2 buildings in particular. The annex, as I already mentioned, leaks into the lobbies. And then in the DPW, in the exterior bays, the skylights were removed due to a microburst. And now the holes where the skylights are just open. So it snows in the bays. And so while they are outdoor bays, there shouldn't be water infiltration from the ceiling into a workspace. So again, mold, mildew, slipping hazard, temperature control, these all sort of fall under the same category. For roofs, City Hall, there's a known leak. That's what we're looking to repair, not a full replacement. But the annex, DPW, and Exhibition Hall, full replacement. They all have consistent leaks that have been patched and chased over the years. But as the indoor air quality studies have said, there's water infiltration in the ceilings, in ceiling tiles. There's staining, drips in the wall. That's mold. It contributes to poor air quality. And then coupled with that, several of these buildings have windows that are no longer functional or never function, particularly City Hall. Most of the windows have plexiglass storm windows over them and they do not open. So you have water infiltration contributing to poor air quality in the buildings, and then you have no way of bringing fresh air into any of the offices. So you have workers here 35, 40 hours a week sitting in, relatively undesirable breathing conditions, which increases sick time usage, it lowers productivity, it lowers morale, it lowers overall health. So Station 3, Fire Station 3 also has issues with windows leaking, water damage to the building from the infiltration. So
You get
Finally-
ready to wrap up there.
if we were to put this air filtration system in, it would use a bipolar ionization system, which essentially traps smaller particles, increasing its size and making it easier to filter, which would contribute to better COVID-19 guidance compliance and also better indoor air quality for the staff and the public.
Okay. Jeff and Sean, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate your proposal at the time, and you've heard the spiel, I'm sure, that we've got $99 million in proposals for $13 million of money, but we're going to try to figure out how we get the maximum bang for the buck. So again, I appreciate what both of you do, and I'm hoping to get through and get some recommendations out certainly by the beginning of September, and I'm hoping actually before that, but I'm not sure politically I can get that done. So thank you for coming in, appreciate it. All right, thank you.